Hello and welcome to Fire in the Belly. Today we have myself, Mighty Pete, and we are joined by the Bronson Hill. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you, sir.
Hey, how's it going, Pete? Really excited to be with the mighty Pete Lawton and just connect with Ireland, connect with my Irish roots a little bit here.
There you go. Listen, it's great to have you on. I really appreciate you coming on today. So just to give our listeners a bit of a background. So Bronson Hill is the managing member of the Bronson Equity, the bronsonequity.com. Bronson is a general partner in 2,000 multifamily units worth over $200 million. Bronson co-leads a large in-person multifamily meetup in Pasadena, California, called FIBI, Pasadena Multifamily. Bronson is the host of the Mailbox Money Show, and he understands the investor mindset, having spoken individually with over the phone with over 1,200 investors and having raised over $25 million for real estate deals. Bronson is the author of The Single Best Investment Strategy During or After a Pandemic and is a regular contributor to YouTube and his blog. Bronson, welcome to the show. Great to have you on. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. I love talking about all sorts of topics, and you got a lot of diverse topics you go over. So I was looking into your stuff. It's really awesome that you are curious about everything, and I'm sure your listeners are as well. So I'm excited to talk about whatever you want to talk about.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. Well, listen, first of all, let's start with an easy one. What does fire in the belly mean to Bronson?
Fire in the belly. Well, I think fire in the belly is really having a passion for life, really figuring out what you're here to do. There's a book by Simon Sinek that talks about start with why. So once you figure out what your why is, once you figure out, why you're here, um, I think the things that really give you passion and give you a sense of this is what I'm on this earth to do. This is what I'm taking up space and breathing for. Really comes into focus. I'm 41 now. I think probably turning 40 and going through some life changes. I've just had, some experience of saying, hey, life is short. I keep, as the older you get, it's kind of this phenomenon. The quicker the years go by. And when you're a kid, everything just seems to take forever. But as you get older, it's just the months and years really do speed up. And so I think as, I've gotten just, I'm not 80 or anything, but, as I get older, it's just amazing how I've just said, I want to make every moment, every day, I want to do the things that matter. I want to spend time with the people that matter to me. And so I think fire in the belly is just all of that, right? It's saying, hey, I really want to live out my purpose and be the person living the life that I want to live.
And do you have it now? Have you always had it, or what stage are you at in your journey?
Yeah, I definitely have it now. I think, there's I just gave a presentation this weekend from about 250 investors in Phoenix, Arizona, and I was talking about this that, I bought my first house in 2006, and then it was just I just really didn't do much with investing for about 10 years. But I think, there's this saying that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so the idea is just really being available to what life presents at you, and also believing in some sort of sense of divine purpose, or what does this season mean, what is this for right now. And sometimes we don't always understand why we suffer or why we go through difficult things, but I think that everything can be used in a type of convergence to help get you where you want to go. So I try to read really widely, and I have lots of interests and lots of different things that I look into. But I think when it really comes down to it, it's, hey, what am I here to do, and how do I live that out? So yeah, I think I've really been, probably the last several years, been going 110% after it, and it's been fun to do it. So
I mean, are you where you're supposed to be now? Do you think? I mean, it sounds like you're almost playing a bit of catch up. You're taking no prisoners now that you've got it straight, right?
well, I've always been a guy. I have a lot of ideas. There's a personality test called Strengths Finder, which is really interesting, and it talks, one of the 39, I believe, 39 different themes is called learner, and that's one that I have. Is I just continually am trying to learn new things. So I have a lot of interests. I mean, I'm doing multifamily. I get to help people to, we cultivate communities, and we help people achieve passive income through real estate, so they don't have to take up more of their time or take them away from their job, which is great. I also really I love doing things that are personal development related. Like, I'd love to start speaking on those issues. Right? There's a lot of, I think, guys that wrestle with shame, or men and women that wrestle with shame. I like the work of an author named Brené Brown, who talks a lot about shame and vulnerability and empathy, and kind of how do you live this wholehearted life. Because there's a saying, and it's a spiritual saying, but it's, what does it gain you to gain the whole world, but yet forfeit your soul? And I think that your soul really is who you are. You can be so committed to some great goal, but if you're not living true to who you are and what you feel you're here to do, which you can easily lose, and I can easily lose. I'm a goal-oriented person, but I think just really trying to have a balance of going hard for your goals, but keeping those goals kind of open so that if you feel like you need to make a switch, or if something's not working, or if you find yourself suddenly, going through tears after a meeting or after reading a book, it's like, well, maybe there's something here I need to explore, right? So there's not just the big goal and I'm doing this big thing. It's, where's your heart in the middle of that?
I mean, on that, I mean, it sounds like you've obviously had quite a bit of evolution. I mean, what have you learned about Bronson so far?
What I've learned about Bronson so far, well, I've learned a lot. I'll kind of take it to a deeper level here. So, about 6 years ago, I went through a divorce, and I just never wanted to be divorced. My parents are actually divorced, and I have some divorce in my family, and it was a very painful thing. I was married for 9 years, and for me, I think what it really did for me in a positive way, which a lot of people don't speak of divorce as being a positive thing, and it definitely wasn't overall positive thing. Wouldn't wish it on anybody, but that there is a silver lining to everything, and there's an opportunity for growth in everything. And so I learned a lot. I did a lot of self-development. I did a lot of therapy. I did a lot of things that I really felt like I needed to do to really do a deeper dive into what really matters, because we don't know, are we going to die tomorrow or today or in 50 years? We don't really have that timeline. And so trying to live in such a way that I'm making the most of what I have now. I'm being a good steward of my time, 'cause I think, money is great, and when you become financially free, it's great to become financially free. But then you start saying, well, what is, the most precious resource we have is our time. So I think what I've learned is just, how do I really want to invest my time? Who are the people that I want to invest my time with? And what do I want to invest my time doing, so that at the end of my life, whether it's, very short or it's hopefully a very long time, I'll say, you know what, I really gave it everything I had. We got one shot. We've got one shot at today. We've got one shot at this season of life. We've got one shot at, if you're a parent, for me, I'm a dad. So being Ellie's dad, I've got one shot at that. And so I want to do the best I can at those moments. I'm not going to be perfect at it, but I think I've just learned, um, I've stopped caring as much what people think about me, because I really have cared a lot about what people think. And I've just said, you know what, I'd rather live from the heart, rather do this the way I want to do it. I'd rather take some risks. And, I had a great corporate job. I was making over $200,000 a year. I quit the job because I wanted to pursue real estate, and it gives me the ability to travel and spend time with family and do things I value. So I think when you start living from that place, um, it's very different. It's a very different feel than just having a polished corporate, this is what you do for work. It's actually something where you more integrate your passion, your dreams, your values, and your future.
That's really interesting. I mean, well, a couple of things there. I mean, what would be your value set now? I mean, since this transition and this, what I suppose, moving into the real estate arena, I mean, what would be your value set, and how you actually, sort of measure your life as such, or measure your output?
So I'm going to take this, kind of deep. This is my own kind of belief system, and in the past, I was a youth pastor. I would say I'm not religious, but I really believe in a relationship with God. So I guess what that really means is just, I look at life as being an opportunity to walk in relationship with God. And so I have a way that looks like, for me, I pray, I ask, hey, what do you want me to do? I believe in the sense of divine purpose. But I think that, for me, how I evaluate, how's my life going, or how am I doing in relation to that? I feel like, for each of us, God has a calling, or some sort of purpose for each of us. And we need to continually ask, am I doing what God wants me to do? Am I doing the right thing here? Because I can be uber successful and appear, everyone can look at me and say, oh, you're the definition of success. But if my purpose, or really what God wanted me to do, was something different, that could actually be, in a way, a failure, because I'm not really doing what I was put here to do. And I think people have an internal sense of, is this the right place for me? Even if things are hard, even if I'm suffering, you look at people that suffered a lot, like, Gandhi or Martin Luther King or something like that. And, even though they were suffering, they had a great sense of purpose, right? So it's not just that everything's going to be rosy and this is what it's going to be. They became a cause of, hey, this is what I'm here on the earth to do. And so I think the more we can tap into that, and the more anyone can tap into that, it's the stuff that we're really drawn to, saying, wow, this person, I really admire the way they live, because they're not just living for themselves, right? They're living for a higher purpose. And so That's a very deep answer, but I love that, we're talking, this is the Fire in the Belly podcast, right? So we're going deep into the belly. So I thought I'd share that.
Yeah, no, listen, I appreciate that, and it's, I mean, an interest with that, and you're saying there's lots changed. I mean, are you where you're supposed to be right now, do you think? Where are you in
Yeah,
this?
I do. I think so. I think I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. I've had some confirmations of that. Actually, I was sitting right at this. I'm sitting at a table now, but I used to do this medical sales, and it was good. It was, I enjoyed it. It was good, but I just kept having the sense I want to do my own thing. I want to launch my own stuff and create businesses, and write books and travel and do other things. And so it's been about a year now since I left. I had done a bunch with, raised I think $15 million or so, and now in the last year it's been about another 10 million. But um, I was sitting at this table and I had a moment where I was thinking about the pressures of selling and the quarter end, the month end. And I was thinking of how I didn't like that. And what came out of my mouth was, thank God I'm not doing that job anymore. Right. So I think those are little tells that you can tell you're in the right place. Right. Or if you see, just the sense you feel sometimes the wind at your back. Now I'm working as hard or harder than I was before. So it's not like I'm just having the yachts and Mai Tai and feet up on the chair lifestyle. I'm really pushing, but I feel like it's a sense of purpose. It's a sense of, again, that wind at my back, or, hey, this is a new sale that I'm so excited. I can't believe I get paid to do this. I can't believe that my living expenses are covered by real estate now. I can't believe that, I'm really actually becoming an entrepreneur, which I have dreamed about for years. And so, and again, it's not all perfect. There's definitely things, there's issues we're going through in the business. There's different things that come up. But it's just, again, I think those are all signs to say, well, where am I supposed to be? I feel like this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. So I can look at it and say, yeah, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be.
It's interesting, and looking back, I mean, you mentioned the likes of the divorce, and you mentioned all, other things there. It's, do you see that they all had to happen to get you here today, or what way do you reflect on?
Yeah, this is good. Yeah, it's interesting when looking back on your life because, and again, going back to my faith, there's a saying: you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? Because if I knew I was going to take all these twists and turns, and this is how things would go, I'd be like, probably would have freaked out that, oh no, I could never do that. But I do think that, you know, and again, if this is a philosophical question, does God cause things like divorce to happen? Did he cause that to happen? I felt like I did everything I could to try to save the marriage, and we weren't able to make it work. And it was heartbreaking, to the core. I mean, there was a part of me that was just absolutely, destroyed. I mean, who am I as a person? But I think in the middle of that, um, what kind of can remain is this sense of, okay, in every challenge we go through, the emotions are important. Feeling the sadness and the grief and the loss and all that was really important for me. But really trying to find the silver lining, trying to find what is the gift here. And I do think that no matter what the challenge, whether it's a health challenge, a divorce, someone dies, there's all kinds of challenges in life. There's always a silver lining. There's always some sort of gift. And I think to me, the gift was really, I would just call it, for this sake of the context of the show, the fire in the belly, for me to say, this is what I'm here to do. This is the direction my life is supposed to go. And I don't want to be at the end of my life regretting. And there's this saying that says, at the end of your life, you will regret more the things that you didn't do rather than the things that you did. Right. So I want to live my life without regrets, and I want to just continue to look forward. So I think, all those things they make us who we are. And if we're willing to learn the lessons, it's amazing what is able to open up. So I think that's a great question, but I think, just continually every day, just saying, what's the lesson? What's the purpose? Where's God in this? Where's my future? What's the plan here? And I believe in that there is a plan. There's a plan for everybody. So it's just trying to pay attention to, okay, God, what are you doing? There's a really good book called The Alchemist. And it talks basically, if you've ever read The Alchemist, is a great book, but he said, like, kind of follow the omens, right? Like, look in your life and see, what are the signs, what are the confirmations, what are the closed doors, like paying attention to all those things. And I think when you pay attention to those things, you can get a sense of, oh, I do feel like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to do.
I mean, there's a lot of I suppose comfort comes from that, right? That there's something more than ourselves. There's physical meat suit, this body that we're doing.
Yeah,
So there's
right.
something more out there, right? And it's interesting that, how much of it do you think is down to your driving? As you say, I love that. It's like, tell God your plans to make him laugh, and that's so true. In so many ways. So for you, how much is it driven by you and your wants and your needs and etc., and how much is it driven by something greater than us as such?
Well, it's really interesting. I think I mentioned I was a youth pastor for a number of years, and there's this thought of when, just bring it back to spirituality here, when someone like comes to God or they make a decision, I'm going to follow God with my life. Is that decision, is that I found God or did God find me? Right? Which is it? Is it, and one, there's a saying, there's a term, it's called Armenianism. It's a belief basically that it's not about Armenia or anything, but it basically is saying that the person makes the choice and it's completely their responsibility. And the other side is more of a, I'm sorry, the Armenian is more of the, it's the choice. And then the Calvinistic side is more like, well, it's all fate, right? And it just happens. And this is just, it is what it is. So yeah, how does that balance? And where is the balance between it? Because that's really what you're asking, is how much is free will and how much is just kind of, fate, or how things align or things come together. I think it's a mystery, and I think it can be both, right? It can be both. And when it comes to purpose, how do I live my life? How do I live? How do I choose these things? I think everything that comes into our life, Pete, it's really a invitation of, do I want to, really take all the growth I can get out of this, or do I want to avoid the pain? And we all do things like numbing. We all, we'll find things like binge watch, or we watch porn, or we do other things that are harmful to us, and or maybe they're just to help us to avoid whatever the thing is at the time. And there's different ranges and of things that are healthy or unhealthy or illegal or whatever. There's all kinds of things there. But I think what it comes down to is just realizing that I do have choice and I do have agency, and I do, no matter how challenging the situation, if I look at myself like a victim, I will never get to where I want to go. But if I look at myself and say, hey, you know what, life is 10% what happens to me and 90% what I do with it. Those are the people that I admire. Those are the people that I follow. Those are the people that have become role models to me. So I'd rather be somebody who says, you know what, life does happen and difficult things do happen. I need to acknowledge that, and good things happen. And some of it's out of my control, and it makes me look really good, but it really was just life, right? It's just the things that happen. But I do have incredible responsibility. I have incredible freedom. I have incredible choice to basically what my attitude will be in relation to the difficult things or the really positive things in my life. So I think just focusing on the choice that I have is really, really, really important.
Mm. No, super interesting. And then for you, I mean, I suppose taking it a step further, I mean, where do you sit in regards to nature versus nurture? I mean, how much of this do you come to this, this lump of rock with? How much of it is sort of as a result of your experiences and your surroundings? Do you have any thoughts?
Yeah, I love this interview, man. I didn't expect it to go this deep, but I love it. Yeah, so I think I think it's both. I think it's nature and nurture. I mean, I think if what percentage is it on each? Some people would say 50-50. I mean, I'd say there are certain things like, okay, I was born, I'm a, white male, I'm 5'9". To make the NBA would be a little difficult for me, right? Just because of my size and my, predisposition. I mean, is it impossible? No. I mean, if I said, hey, this is what I want to do, I mean, you see people that do it, it's possible. But I think I just think anything in life you have to look at and really follow your own passion, follow your own path. There's the idea of the 10,000-hour rule. And if you're doing what you love and you're following your passion, if you're fortunate enough to be able to, not everybody's able to do it because they have their situations, they're in difficult situations, or they have to do a certain job, or they're taking care of a family or parents, and they can't just like, hey, I'm just going to pursue whatever I want. I'd say most people are probably that way. But if you are lucky enough to be able to really pursue passion and develop, I think the world is out there for everybody. So I think the biggest thing that I think learned about myself is that there's nothing that separates me from anybody that I admire. We were talking about Grant Cardone, who's kind of a real estate personality who's raised probably $1 billion or more, who's just everywhere. Nothing that separates me from him or separates me from any other famous person or anybody listening who's thinking about someone they admire. It's just my own belief system is that possible for me? And I think a lot of life is just really being able to say, what do I enjoy? What do I like? And focusing on that and just continuing to work towards it. And what happens is as you live out that belief and that becomes refined in you, if you continue to stay with it, that's how people do stuff that other people would say is impossible or really was impossible until somebody actually did it.
No, it is, it's fascinating the way, as you said, different people approach it in different ways. And for you now, I mean, what is your do you have a set of deciding criteria, or is it of a set of commandments or a set of, ethics that you work to that's saying, where I am now, this is the decisions I make based upon these values or principles, right? Do you have a set that you work to or such?
Yeah, yeah. So I started going. There's some events that talk about goals each year, and so I went to one a few years ago. It was kind of a goal setting event, and there are different goal setting events where it's like, oh, I want to lose 20 pounds, or I want to do this, or I want to do that. But where this goal setting event really started was, what makes me angry? What are the things that I wish were different in the world? What are things that I love doing as a kid? What are all these different things that really talk about passion, right? They talk about things that when you do them, you come alive. Like if I could stop this evil thing in the world, or if I could see more of this. And then that's the place when you're in that space, because it really is kind of a space. It's not just like a head space, it's a heart space, really. And then you start to say, okay, well, who am I? And really, what's my mission? What am I doing here? When you can create that. So I created a mission statement, and then I started creating some goals from there. So every year I do that. I create goals. I read those every day. I have a little routine I do in the morning, and I'm getting ready to put together, I have a YouTube channel. So I'm getting ready to put together some videos that kind of talk about this. But basically, just to go through and sit in that space of, who am I? Where do I want to go? What does it look like? And how am I going to get there? And I think affirmations or incantations are really helpful too, where you say, hey, I'm going to focus on these things and believe these things are true. And so I think the criteria you have to use, no matter what your faith background or whatever your beliefs are, it has to come from a place of authenticity of this is who I feel I really am. Whether you feel like it's God or you feel like it's just, hey, this is what I've always loved, or these are passions that are there. I think you have to start with that place, because in that space, it's probably much more heart than it is head. There's usually more tears, and there's more things, things when we find ourselves crying in movies, or we find ourselves, and of course, guys don't cry in movies, right? Except we find, oh, I got something in my eye, but it happens to me sometimes. But just really starting with that place, and then you evaluate and say, am I living true to the things that touch my heart? Am I living true to the things that people have told me that I'm good at, and that I can actually can make a difference here? Because maybe I love doing something, but I'm terrible at it. Well, am I willing to give the time to become good at it? And sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. So I think um, there is a process you can go through, but I think it is really important to spend time there regularly so you can really evaluate, am I really doing what I feel I should be doing? Once a quarter, I try to get away for a night or two just to kind of ask that question. Am I living in accordance with what I'm supposed to be doing? Is there anything that needs to change here? How has this last quarter gone in relation to my goals, in relation to my purpose, in relation to my mission? And does any of that need to change? And so I think it's hard to stay there and get in that space, but that's the stuff I think that really leads to huge, huge life change, is when you actually spend time refining those things.
I mean, out of interest, and I know it's completely unscientific. I mean, how many people, or what percentage of people do you think actually even get a glimpse of what a true passion is? Otherwise they're sort of, this is the way I am, I'm stuck, and that's my life, and the dice has been rolled, and it's, we basically are autopilot till the end. I mean, how common is it people that do what you've done? They take that time out, they take that time to reevaluate, to catch a breath.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting when we're kids. My daughter's 9 right now, and she's very artistic. She loves creating things. She does. I mean, you talk about content creation. You and I are content creators. We create things, but kids are content creators. They just create stuff, and you look at them, especially when they're under the age of about 5. You talk about genuine emotion. You talk about. I mean, there's really no faking. When you're 2 or 3 or 4 years old, you're angry, sad. You're gonna cry. You're gonna you let you know. There's no, like, it's a very genuine place to live. And I think as we get older, to try to fit in, to try to, it's not cool anymore, or somebody doesn't like our drawing of a purple pony, or whatever the thing is, right? We kind of start to, instead of uh, really being who we are, we make compromises to fit in. And fitting in is different than belonging, right? Belonging is where you can fully be yourself, and you can be fully loved and known and valued because of who you are. Fitting in is you actually give up part of yourself to be a part of a group, right? And so I think for me, I think a lot happened when I went through my divorce, and I think that was part of the gift too. Is just like, hey, I've really spent a lot of my life really trying caring what people think, and really trying to win others' approval. And I realized, life is just too short. And so anyways, I think I've had, to me, it's been a real gift to go through that process. And I think a lot of people never get there. And that's why when I talk to people, I say a lot of people do, because you can, when you talk to somebody, you can kind of tell, is this person only professional? Are they only here? Or do they actually, when you sit down and talk, you actually can kind of break it down and you start getting real. And I think the closer I can get to my own authentic self, where I'm not having to tone it down, I'm not having to, give it up. And obviously, we don't, always tell people what we think of them. We don't tell them to f off or whatever. We do use some restraint. But I think just the sense of like me being focused on my passion, saying, "This is, I'm here for this." And it's not always going to fit every situation. It's not always going to fit in every friendship or every and I've realized that as I've gone through life transitions the last 5 6 years. I've lost a lot of friends because I've been through a lot of change and they haven't necessarily. So you'll find that you're drawn to different people. So I would say, yeah, I mean, I say a lot of people I do recognize do live from that place, but I would say it's not the majority of people. I say it's probably less than half of people, they're adults, that I see really have in some ways connected to that.
Mm. No, it's always interesting to see, where people are at and what's going on, But I mean, do you think, do people get you? And I mean that respectfully, it's like, because
Yeah.
we're all different, right? Especially when we change, we transition. There's people in our lives that don't stay with us, But in general, do people get you, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good question. I mean, I think I have not, I haven't remarried. It'd be great to, find somebody and get remarried. But I think in the past, I gave up too much of myself. I gave up too much of my dream. There was too much focus, and at the time, it sacrificed. It was I don't regret doing that, but I think now it's like I want to be around people that will help me in my purpose, and that I can help them in their purpose. Right now, a lot of people that I meet, they just see me as a guy who does real estate, right? And I help people. I raise money. I do deals, and maybe I'm well spoken or what. They don't really see what's behind it. I mean, really, at the core of who I am is a sense of purpose and faith. They might just see, hey, okay, this person's genuine. I spoke at this conference this weekend. I got to be, oh, this guy's a really nice guy, really genuine. It's like, well, yeah, that's part of it. I want to be nice, but I'd rather offend somebody to help them get to where they want to go. I'd rather be somebody who helps somebody on their journey, and rather than just to be somebody who's likable, right? Like I don't necessarily need to be likable. So I think, at the core, and this, we didn't really talk about this, but my big why is I had a moment where my sister is involved in the cause of human trafficking and trying to help stop human trafficking. And they've raised $20 million through an organization called Dressember that I'm now serving on the board with. And so it's an amazing organization, but there's 20 to 40 million human slaves in the world today. And I heard a story of this speaker named Christine Kane, and she was talking about rescuing a girl who was in Greece. And when this girl was being rescued, I won't share all the story, but it's a really touching story. But this girl was 14, 15 years old from North Africa. She was rescued in Greece, and from basically working the streets and the sex industry. And this is somebody who her family doesn't know if she's missing or whatever, and so she's out there. And so when she's being rescued, it takes them sometimes a few days to warm up because they don't know you're traffickers as well. So as she's being rescued, she, with tears in her eyes, said to Christine, she said, well, why didn't you come sooner? And Christine said, well, we didn't come sooner because we didn't know you were here. But now that we know there are girls like you, and we're going to do everything we possibly can to stop this. So to me, like, that was a moment where something really broke, and something said, this is a cause that's worth living and dying for. And you see people, living and dying. People, eat themselves to death, or they gain 50 pounds and then they die early, or they start chain smoking. They do things that, I'm not saying any of those things, if any listener has that, it's just, we see people that without vision, people really perish. And so to me, that's something that I want to give my life to. And I think few people get what that means to me, but my financial goals, which are really big, are involved with giving away 90% to that cause, because I believe that's why I've been put here, is to do that. Right. So, yeah, very few people get that.
I think, and that's really, really key, is to take the sort of the ugly face off money. People sort of more this definition of, I want to earn a lot of money, I want to be rich, but it's understanding what's the why, and I think that's huge, because it's like, yeah, I want to get it so I can give it.
Yeah.
That's a game changer right there, as opposed to people going, no, I just want to lie around in yachts and pools and whatever, which that's
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah.
but then you say, what after that, what then, right?
Yeah. No, it's it. I mean, I talk about it, and I actually shared this weekend where, yachts and mai tais, as a lifestyle, you can do that, for a month or two or whatever, and there's nothing wrong with it. Just, I'm pretty much, I say it the same way you do, where it's nothing wrong with it. It's just something much more powerful is what am I here to do? Because when I talk about it, like I'm not, there's nothing fake about it. Like this is, if I could, you know, this sounds really morbid, but if my life could end and I could give a certain amount of money to this cause or help end this cause in the world, like I would do it, right? I'm not suicidal or anything. I'm just saying like it's that important to me. And those are the people though that we really value and they live on. You think of most of us, we die and our family may remember, oh, they were a good person or they did this, whatever. Well, who are the people we remember? We remember Gandhi. We remember Martin Luther King. We remember these people that, even William Wallace or these people that they became the cause that they were fighting for, right? So there was very little difference between them and the cause that they wanted. And that's the stuff that, like, I think it gets me really excited and gets me really emotional, honestly. It's just like the cause becomes more important than you. And that, in my opinion, is the cure to depression, most depression anyway. That's the cure to just people existing. And I think it's one of the biggest, um, you know, if you believe the devil is out there and causing things, I think the devil is a distractor, is just trying to get you away from what you're here to do. And so to me, I think that's one of the things that causes us to be most alive is, hey, my purpose, what's my purpose? What am I here to do? And what sort of legacy, well, how can I make the world a better place?
Mm. I mean, is this a supersized game of you versus you?
Um, Me versus me, meaning if I can do it, then can you explain that a little bit?
Yes, I mean it's all because you say to people, "How are you doing?" So yeah, I'm doing great. Are you capable of more? Well, yeah. So why don't you do more? Do you know what? They instantly sort of fall into this trap. So then we are aware of a greater version of ourselves,
Mm,
but also then we're aware of the sort of worst version of ourselves, right? So
mhm.
we can visualize the different versions of ourselves, the old version of ourselves, and then a potential new version of ourselves. So then the case is, well, if you know what to do or you know what it looks like, then why don't you just do it, right?
Right. So it's really interesting. There's a book I read recently called The Gap and the Gain. And it's a great book by a guy named Dan Sullivan. He talks about this that entrepreneurs or people that are very driven, really want to do things in their life, they constantly look forward from where they're at and they notice this gap between the ideal and where they are now, right? And they'll look at that and it leads to depression and discouragement and just, gosh, I'm not where I want to be, and I wish I were doing things like this person or making this kind of difference, or why isn't this happening? But what he says is, he says it's important to stop in that moment and turn around and look back and look at the gain, right? Look how far you have come, look at the things that you have done and reflect on that, because that leads to gratitude, that leads to joy, that leads to fulfillment. I'm actually doing something. Look at what's happening here. So I think that's the practice of gratitude. But I mean, I think the things in our life though, um, I want to kind of say something about, to me, all this stuff is very deep and it ties back to faith, right? Because if I believe, what makes me a good person or what makes me have value is just that I'm a human being, right? It's not, I don't have to do it. There's no prerequisite for that. God's not going to love me more or less if I do things or don't do things. He just loves me. I'm just his child, just like everybody. Like we're all created. We're all his. And yet there's this desire that I'm going to become more valuable. I'm going to become something more if I do more. But I think that's where grace comes in, where it's like, grace is about what God has done for us, right? Um, what He's done for me versus what I can do. And I think that allows me to have grace for myself. That yeah, some days I'm going to totally miss it. Some days I'm going to put my foot in my mouth. Some days I'm going to say something to somebody I love and say, I really wish I hadn't said that, and I'm going to feel really bad about it. Or some days I want to be like, I wish if I'd have made these other decisions, there's always more we can do. But I think, all of this is balance, right? I've got to live in a way that I'm not, if I die tomorrow, I live well. And if I live for another 50 years or 60 years, like I'm going to be living a wise life. Right. And so I think it's in the middle of all of that. It's the idea of being kind to yourself. It's the idea of, uh, you know, controlling what you can control and letting go of the results, and just realizing that, if something amazingly huge and something like ending human slavery in the world, which you talk about a big, hairy, audacious goal. And this is the second most powerful criminal organization in the world, right? This is a $150 billion a year industry. And who am I to say that, hey, I want to stop this in the world, right? So can I do that? There's no way I could do that. But, if I can continue to focus on the cause, maybe I can do it for one village in one place in the world. Maybe I can help people like this girl say, hey, you know what? to these parents, don't give your kids up to go send them to Europe and put them on a boat to like here's what could happen, and share some of those stories. So I guess it's just, again, looking at the gain of, well, what can I do? And if things go beyond you and it becomes something bigger, you also have to acknowledge, okay, well, I did my, but that's kind of out of your hands, right? So I don't know, there's this sense of give everything, but also have a level of detachment that's like, it's kind of up to God if what sort of fruit happens from all of this.
Mm. But it's, I mean, there's different things there, I suppose. And there's a saying which always intrigues me. It's saying, that your voids are your values. And I kind of wonder for so many people, I mean, are they actually living to their genuine value set, or are they living to, something that happened in their background, or they're living so that something that happened doesn't happen again, right? So they're not living, they're just trying to compensate, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, so it's really interesting. A lot of times we are living out of the past of things that happened to us. So if somebody made fun of us when we were a kid, or somebody said something to us, and I find myself as an adult, like I'll be in a situation where somebody said something hurtful, or they kind of were rejected something that I did or whatever, and I find myself with this internal chip on my shoulder of trying to prove them wrong, or prove them, that hey, I'm more than that, or I'm whatever else. But I think that when we become aware of that stuff, it allows us to really deal with it and to live from a deeper truth, right? That I'm loved because I'm a person, or I know I feel disrespected here, but the truth is and that's a painful place, right? To really come back to the place of truth, and really the affirmation of, no, I'm loved because I love myself, and because God loves me, because I'm created. And like, there's no prerequisite to that, right? But I think most people, uh, we can easily live out of just this kind of shallow place of, I want to look successful, I want to have stuff, I want to do these big huge things. And again, there's nothing wrong with driving a nice car, or having a boat, or traveling all the time, or like, there's nothing wrong with any of it. It's just, does it define you? I mean, if you get all those things, will you look at the end and say, it just really didn't mean anything, or I didn't really get what I was actually looking for anyway? And I think that's one of the worst things, that a lot of people, they achieve all the fame and all the money and everything they want, and then they just find they're completely empty. And so that's something that I think is, um, important to look at.
Mm. I mean, it is really interesting because when, a lot of guests that come on the show, I mean, one of the questions I like to ask them is, do you like yourself and do you love yourself? And, and I mentioned at the start, we've done a lot more interviews than we have released episodes. And the common factor quite often is that people that can't say that they like themselves or love themselves are quite often is the interviews that just don't make it live, because they're
Mm,
not for any reason other than that actually there's a disingenu this yeah there's a
disingenuous, yeah.
genuineness about them, or there's something about it, and they're the ones that say, actually, this interview went far deeper than I intended or
Mm,
I thought it was going to, and as a result, you sort of, I feel slightly exposed, so please don't publish, which I always find interesting, and I don't set out to do that, but I just find it interesting that we can hold up the sort of the sheet for so long, but then after a while, it's like, actually, this is too much, you know.
yeah. Well, Pete, I got to say, you have a way of asking very penetrating questions, which I love, because this is the stuff that, like, when I went through my divorce, and I just would literally, I mean, this is pretty personal, but I'd come home and I'd journal and cry every day. I just went through it for like a year, 6 months. It was a lot. It was a long time, and I didn't know how to grieve, but really, I just say I learned how to grieve. And I think it's something that my parents really didn't know how to teach me, because they didn't really know how to go through that themselves. And I think there's this idea of a dark night of the soul where, if you've never been through it, um, it's not something you wish on anybody. But I think when you go through it, there's an invitation there. And I think I had a therapist years ago that said, when you go through difficult things, it's an invitation, like almost an invitation from God of, I can know myself, or know God on a deeper level here, right? It's an invitation. And I think that, again, it's how we view it. Did this terrible thing happen to us, or did it happen for us? And I think one is actually feels really overwhelming and lead to fear, and one is completely, it just gives incredible sense of control, and wow, this is, I can actually learn and grow from this. But and this is all stuff like, I'm a work in progress, right? Every single person is. And so this is not stuff I've mastered, but I think these are the questions we should be asking ourselves. And sometimes the people we love, we should be asking each other. But I love it. I love that you're going there.
What for you? I mean, what did you learn from the divorce in that period?
Yeah, I learned that I was very codependent. I learned that I was someone who, like I said, really looked to someone else for my value. I looked to other people to get my sense of worth. I look to accomplishments. I look to try to achieve great things to get value. And then I think, going through it and going through, having been, like I mentioned, I was a youth pastor, going through something very difficult and feeling some religious shame over, man, am I okay? Am I okay with God? Am I okay with others? Like that was really difficult for me, but it really helped me, force me to look face to face and say, well, what really, where does my value come from? Like why am I valued? Is it because of what I do, or is it because just I'm a human, I'm born and I'm inherently loved and worthy of love? And so I think that's something it did for me. And again, it really shook me to the core. And I asked a lot of very hard questions about myself, about my faith, about God, about what am I here to do. I wrote a lot of music. I'm a musician, so I read, I had a bunch of material to write, love songs and heartbreak songs and different things. But that was very therapeutic as well. But I think just being willing to, put myself out there. And Brené Brown talks about this as well. And if anybody hasn't read, if they're enjoying this conversation, they like talking to Brené Brown has been incredibly helpful for me. Her book, The Gifts of Imperfection, just amazing, amazing, amazing book. But she just really talks about, how do you actually live wholehearted and being creative, meaning you're putting yourself out there, right? So this interview will go out and it will be shared, and some people will listen to it, right? And then they'll hear more of my story, which they may not know. A lot of people don't know that I've been divorced. A lot of people don't know that I've been through difficult things. But I think the more that we can put ourselves out there and be creative, whether it's creating music or it's creating art, it can be a very vulnerable process. But when we do that, it really gives permission for our lights to shine and for other people to shine their lights. And so I think it's just, again, allowing the feelings, the emotions, who I am, what I'm feeling to come out and share it, and not to have to hide those things feels so liberating. So I think that's one thing it did for me as well, Pete.
What does music do for you then? I mean, is that just a creative outlet for you, or is it a method of communication, or what is it, or a flow area? Flow state?
Yeah, so I have written songs over the years. I used to write in college. I put together kind of a gospel album, which was a lot of fun to write. And then, I've been playing guitar since I was in high school. But um, I just found, I just when I was inspired, I would write music. I did in college. I would play a lot of shows in Los Angeles, where I live, and I just really enjoyed it. I enjoyed playing. I enjoyed performing. And then, when I went through my divorce, it was really interesting because I would call someone up and it was just really heavy to go through. And there was a lot of heavy emotions. So I'd call somebody up and I just feel like I slimed them. I just be like, blah, 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 just like all this stuff all over. And I almost like apologize. Hey, I'm really sorry. I'm really going through. But what it allowed me to do is when I had a lot of emotion, a lot of stuff, and a lot of difficult or whatever the emotion was, if I took time and I just wrote some thoughts down about it, and if I was able to put it to music, two things would happen. One is something really positive came from something very challenging, right? I was able to transform some of that difficult or the pain or the emotions or whatever that was, or just something really hard. I could produce this song. The other thing is I could share it now with a friend, and they could say, wow, I really hear the emotion, or I really feel the pain, or I really see this. And that allowed me to feel seen, I think, which is really what I was looking for in the first place. So I think it's amazing when people can express themselves in the arts. There's a way that music touches our I mean, you all think of a song that just takes us to tears, or has taken us to tears at some point. And for me, one song I remember is Coldplay, the song Fix You, right? And the tears stream down your face and you lose something you can't replace. And it's just, again, there's emotion for me there, right? It takes me a place of like, I remember it. And I still can get emotional talking about it now. So I think music has a way of just really getting in there. And I think writing music, again, I don't always like writing music, but sometimes I'll feel inspired and I'll write because it's a way for me to share a deep emotion.
No, it's so true, and then it's close as well to journaling as well. And it's really good for people. And then also, if you turn it to music, then it brings it to a different dimension as well. So it's always interesting, right? That we can do that. It's all
Yeah.
communication, all connection. Yeah, I mean, there is that expression which I do like, where they talk about, from your darkest hour comes your brightest moment, and
Mhm.
I'm really getting a reflection of that. Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, I think it's, yeah, again, I go back to my faith. There's this saying that God will not give you more than he will enable you to bear, or he won't give you more than you can bear. And that just means like, okay, you go through something, you'll be able to bear it. But I think the other part of that, as I said it, I kind of spoiled the quote, but he won't give you more than he will enable you to bear. So it's kind of like when you go through something really difficult, and if you're able to see it, even in the moment when you don't see the purpose and you don't see it, it literally just makes no sense. It's just suffering. You're in pain. Someone around you is in pain. It's just it feels so frustrating, angry, out of control. Just stop and say, you know what? I don't know what the plan for this is, but there's going to be something good here. And I really want to find it. And honestly, when I'm going through something difficult, I need friends and people around me that are going to show me that, because I forget that. But looking back, I can see that. I can see every single difficult thing in my life, Pete, has been something that actually has created so much growth. It's created so much perspective. It's created so much more than I had before. And so I think it has to be. I mean, I think it's almost like, this sounds really morbid, but it's almost like the level of success that you want to have, or the level of achievement, or the level of just purpose and where do I want to go, or what, to get where you want to go. It's almost like the suffering has to equal that. I wish it weren't that way, but in a way, like suffering has this way of just like a fire refining and really kind of working out all of the impurities, right? Fire will kind of work out impurities and precious metals or things like that. And so I think just really getting to the core of, again, what am I here to, what's this really all about? And sometimes people get it, when they're young. People get it when they're middle age or old. But whenever we get it, there's a saying, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. And so for me, my divorce was that. It was really something that became a teacher for me to say, um, I'm okay, and I'm going to be okay, and I'm going to live this out. I'm going to do the best I can. I'm not going to do it perfect. I'm going to do it messy, but I'm going to just try to live a genuine life. And um, you look around at our world, like who are the people that achieve great things? A lot of them have very challenging stories. Not everybody, but the people that we have done the heart work, not just the hard work, but the actual heart work. Those are people we really admire.
No, it is so true. And for you, when you're actually going through this process, I mean, are you proud of where you are today? Are you proud of who you stand as, and your position at this time? And I know it's a work in progress, and we are all work in progress, right? But do you like yourself? Do you love yourself? And are you proud of yourself?
Yeah, yeah, no, I do. I think I'd say, to be honest, I think on most days, yeah, I think sometimes it's always challenging. I think we're, humans, and myself included, we're kind of negative. We have a negative bias, right? It's easy to look at what lacks. It's easy to look at the gap. The idea of like looking at where I want to be and where I'm at now. But that's why the affirmations are really important. Like I tell myself every morning, I'm worthy of love. I'm the one. I like and I admire myself. I mean, these things, they sound a little cheesy saying on a podcast, but to me, those are things that, as we say these things, we start to internalize them. And so I can say, yeah, like I really love who I am. I love what I bring to the room. I love what I bring to my friends. I love what I bring to um, my daughter. I love that I'm able to live this life. And um, yeah, I would say yes. And I think self-love is really important. And I think anybody listening that says, hey, this is a real challenge, for me, I mean, I will back it up here for a minute. 5, 6 years ago, going through my divorce, I would say the answer is probably no. I didn't really like and love myself. I might say, oh yeah, I like and love myself. But when I really got to the heart level, I'd probably say, no, I really wish I was different, or I wish something was different in my life, or I worked something out. But I think what happened is that, again, that self-talk, a lot of times we internalize the negative things that have been said to us, or we've said to ourselves over the years. And just these tapes have played for so long that we just, something bad happens and immediately we go to, it's me, it's my fault, it's because I'm not okay, or I don't like myself, whatever. We start this negative self-talk. The only way to change that is you have to change the tape. And how you do that is you create affirmations and you start saying those things to yourself. So I've watched as I've started saying those things, I've started to internalize. Not only the external things have changed, where the net worth has changed and the growth and the job and all the stuff and it's great. But what's the most important thing is I really like who I am. I really love who I am. I love that what I bring to a room. I love what I bring to people. I love that I'm able to be a great friend. I'm really able to be someone who can be there for other people. So, yeah, I would say, yeah.
Mm. Have you been this version of you earlier in your life, do you think? Because people sort of they're born as one thing, and then they get to whatever age people talk about, 5 or 7, and then we go off on a distracted path, right, to please others. Have
Yeah.
you seen this version of you before, do you think?
Um, I would say I don't. I think a lot of what we have when we're kids. There's some genuineness there, but we're from a pretty young age. We're kind of taught by our parents as well. We're taught how our parents what emotions are acceptable, what emotions are not acceptable, and I love my parents. They're amazing, and I have a good relationship with both of them. They've experienced a lot of growth since I've grown up, and I've experienced a lot of growth. But I think sometimes we can't always give what we can't give what we don't have. And I think that there's some things that I've learned that at the time they didn't have to give, and I didn't know to receive them. So I think I think it's we all start where we start. There's a lot of other amazing things I got from my parents, right? I could go down the list. I've got great work ethic. I've got other people's skill, other things, but some of the things about the heart work I didn't get, and I think. So I think, probably even 5 years ago, even a few years ago, I don't think I could really have had this conversation to this level because I think that, um, when you really stare, a very difficult situation in the face. And I know a guy, one of actually my best friend, he had terminal cancer at age 16, and he, um, was basically given 6 months to live. And he went to a prayer meeting. He felt like God healed him, and they showed up and they scanned. There was nothing there, and whether that was a supernatural healing or it was just spontaneous or whatever, but he has this kind of old soul way of talking about life, right? Because of what he's been through. So I think that, again, it's the challenge we go through, it can allow us to become a different person. So no, I would say the answer is no, I wasn't the person I am now. And I just, whatever happens in my life, I just hope that I can learn from it. And I have a friend who's a psychologist, another psychologist, actually another friend psychologist, but she would say this, she would say, you live and hopefully you learn, because it's not a given. We used to think, oh, you live, you learn, you live, you learn. Well, there's some things I've gone through the same thing 3 or 4 times. I didn't learn. And then I say, oh, I got to learn. So and I actually learned whatever the lesson was. But it's a challenge to be kind to yourself and just say, you know what, I'll get it when I get it. And I'm going to do the best I can. But I just, I think I'm at a different place than I've ever been in my life. And I'm grateful for that.
It's really interesting. You talk about, something that I have to get it. It's like, no, you don't. You don't have to do anything. You get to get it if you wish, if you choose to. But it's having that. Is that the wisdom? That you talked about, the wisdom to listen, or the wisdom to reflect and say, what's the lesson here? It's not, you know, assuming it's not God's sort of out to get me, or whatever your choice of, higher power is. Is that the lesson, do you think? Or what is wisdom made up of, let's say, put it that way?
Yeah. I think it does depend on your belief system. But I think wisdom is, you can say like knowledge is like knowing stuff, but wisdom is like becoming wise, right? Like what is, somebody I talk to that's a little older, has had a little more life experience, I can learn. I have different mentors in different areas. They'll teach me things about real estate. They'll teach me things about, faith. They'll teach me things about maybe walking through emotions or different things you go through. And yeah, I think wisdom is just it comes through life experience, and sometimes it really comes through bad decisions, right? You do something, and like when you're a kid and you touch something hot and you burn your hand, well, the lesson is what? Don't touch something hot, or maybe check before you touch it, whatever it is, right? So I think that things in life are like that, where they're like the hot, kettle or the hot pot that we touch that we get burned. And so, I think the more we can learn from these things, the more it allows us to grow. And again, I'm not always in the frame of mind to learn and grow from everything, but I think in general, like, yeah, I think there is a lot there to reflect and learn from.
No, it's super powerful. Tell us, talk to us about real estate. What got you into it, and what does it do for you now?
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Now we went deep. We can go more business stuff. This is good.
Hey,
Are you real quick, Pete? Are you a therapist or anything? Is that your background, or do you
oh,
do
I'm
anything in
I'm
therapy?
a building engineer, so
Oh,
that's,
you are. Okay. Are you a life coach as well?
yeah. I do quite a bit of
Okay,
coaching.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
this is. I feel like I should pay you for this session. This is good. Um, yeah. So real estate. A little bit of my story. I was a well-paid professional, making good money, and but I didn't like that. I was working for someone else. I wanted to do my own thing, which would give me some flexibility in my time. And I'd wanted to do that for years, but I'd started buying some single family houses in different parts of the country and had 4 or 5 houses, and just realized it wasn't going to give me the cash flow of what I wanted. And so I have a relative who said, "Hey, why don't you try to raise some money and do multifamily?" And I said, "Well, how do you do that?" And so he told me how to do it. And so I basically started a meetup and kind of went down that road and started raising money, and just my background is more sales, and so I found that that was a good way for me to continue to grow. But I think the biggest thing I enjoy now is really helping people that, like these days, inflation is, at least in the US, between 8 and 15%, depending on what numbers you look at. So if you're holding money in the bank, you're losing 8 to 15% a year. So that's like a negative investment, right? So the idea of getting into real assets, such as housing, particularly long-term, multifamily housing, it's been such a great experience for people to invest with, and a lot of people see the value of it. So it's been a lot of fun. And obviously, there's a lot of growth that's happened, but I think for me, just being, a part of, being able to be an entrepreneur, being able to grow a business, being able to feel like you're making a difference in the world, making communities better, and also helping investors, it's been fun.
What has it allowed you to do? I mean, it sounds like it's not only with this sort of transition in your life and this change point, what is it about property that allows that to happen?
Yeah. So, when you own an asset, you own something typically that, Robert Kiyosaki, from his book Rich Dad Poor Dad, he says, a liability is something that takes money out of your pocket each month, and an asset is something that puts money in your pocket each month. So if I own a house I live in, is that an asset or a liability? Most people would say, "Oh, that's your greatest investment." He would say it's actually a liability, because you're paying, the mortgage on it, you're paying for the gardening, you're paying for the utility, you're paying for all this stuff, right? And there are different ways that can work, but a rental house, or maybe something that is an apartment building or some other type of investment that puts money in your pocket, then that's actually an asset, right? And as you grow, I realized a lot of, if I could grow my passive income, if I could grow my net worth, it would allow me to be able to, do I want to, to have the choice of working? Do I want to go to work today? Do I want to work? Do I want to keep developing this? Or do I want to travel? Do I want to write a book? This year, I mean, this is recording this in June. I've traveled internationally 3 times this year, and I've got at least two or three more trips going this year. And I'm going to Chile to do Patagonia later this year. So it's fun to be able to do the things that are like, oh, this is really fun. But I think beyond it all, it's just it does give me more autonomy and flexibility over my schedule. I can spend time, take a week off, go travel with my daughter, and do things. And I don't necessarily have to report to anybody besides just my investors, and really making sure I'm doing my part there. But I don't have necessarily a boss that's like, here's how you need to do it, right? I'm able to kind of do it how I want to do it, when I want to do it. And I'm pretty self-responsible. So it allows me to, again, instead of me selling for someone else with their products and making them a lot of money, I can sell a product that I'm involved with, and I basically get equity for being a part of these deals.
And that's massive, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of like having a game plan, but also it works while you sleep. It's that, the passive asset aspect. It is an asset. It's a growing asset. So there's so many things. I mean, and the wealthiest people in the world are all involved in property in some shape or form, right? So it's,
Right.
for whatever ways. Because that's one thing I like to say to people is, I mean, there's 100 different ways to get involved in property. It's not just ownership, and there's so many things, right? There is
Yeah.
options.
Yeah. There's a Warren Buffett. He has this quote, and he says, "Unless you learn how to make money when you sleep, you'll work until you die." So the idea of just like, what is passive income? Well, it's that. It's being able to, whether I do anything or not, I'm able to get this mailbox money or other sorts of cash flow. And that's the name of my podcast, is called The Mailbox Money Show. But it's just the idea of like, how do you do that? How do you create that? And just when you meet people that they've been doing it for years, or they retired, I was able to retire from my job after replacing not my income, but I replaced my expenses, right? I replaced the living expenses I have through passive income. And I think that's a transformational story. We've got a guy that I run a meetup here in Southern California, as you mentioned in the intro, and he was a veterinarian, and he's coming this month to our group with 30 or 40 of us to talk about how he quit his job and to be able to do what he wants to do. And so a lot of people, they think, oh, I just don't know about real estate, or I don't know about finance. But I think it's so important to pay attention now. There's so many things happening in the financial world that are changing, and all the money printing and all the stuff that's happening. It's very, very important. So.
Talk to us about your show. I mean, what was your intention there, and what's it all about? What's it been able to do for you?
Yeah, yeah. So I've been going for about a year now on the Mailbox Money Show. We interview people that are doing, whether it's multifamily or other types of investments. We're involved at an ATM machine fund with the fifth largest operator of ATMs in the country. And so we talk, to people that do different assets, or they passively invest, or they are looking at, tax savings. And we're just trying to figure out, like, how do you get this whole passive income thing going? And, it can feel very foreign if people have always done stocks and bonds. Now, I used to be an investment advisor for several years, and I kind of saw behind the curtain. I discovered, and I came to the opinion that I don't think Wall Street really serves people's best interests. I think there's a lot of hidden fees. I think that they'll find their way to get their money, but it can be incredibly volatile. And again, these are traditional investments according to Wall Street, and that's because they educate, spending billions of dollars on just the public to educate them on what's conservative. But when actually I'm able to say, what, actually that's why the reason they call it real estate is it's actually real, right? These days there's so much debt, public debt, private debt. And if things tighten up, or let's say credit tightens up all of a sudden, then people start saying, hey, well, what happens if the stock market crashes by 50% or 40%? Start saying, hey, I really actually need to find something that's going to produce cash flow. So I think there's a lot of different parts to it, but it's really interesting. Money, to me, it's kind of like a game. Not that I don't take it seriously, but it's like the pieces on the board, trying to get to where you want to go and figuring out how to move them. And the board is almost set up like every day it changes a little bit, because the rules change, or the interest rate changes, or the investments change, or different things. And you constantly study and learn. And that's, I think, one way that people really get ahead is through just financial education.
No, it is so true about sort of investing for people, setting a plan, because it's a long term thing, right? And it's funny how we will invest in almost like 30-year goals or 25-year goals in a mortgage, whatever else. We'll commit to that goal, but then sort of people saying, well, what's your goal for the next 12 months? Like, I don't know. It's like
Yeah,
totally different,
yeah,
right?
right. No, that's it. Yeah, and that's why it's important for, we do with investors. We'll have, what are your goals? What do you want to do? What are you trying to? Are you trying to retire? Or are you trying just to generate passive income? Like, what is the goal? And I think, like you said, you can spend 40 hours a week or 50, 60 hours a week and working, and then say, well, what was it all for? And I know a couple doctors I used to work with, they each made, over $2 million a year, and they were working 80 hours a week. And we're just thinking, like, I don't envy the life, because it didn't feel like, even that to me felt like a time for money trade, or they got paid when they would go in to do do the work or the procedures or whatever it would be, right? Versus somebody who's like, I have the availability. If I want to do this, I can, but it's my choice, right? I don't have to just keep grinding. And a lot of people that make a lot of money, they just find a way to spend more. They buy more cars, they buy more houses, they buy more stuff, and it doesn't always, generate the life that they want.
Mm. What out of interest, what's your investor profile? Are you an investor or saver, or where do you sit?
Yeah, so I'm an investor. Yeah, I invest in something in every deal we do. I'm probably I'd say about 85% of my net worth is in multifamily real estate, alongside our investors. I invest in other things, invest in self-storage. I have some stuff in our ATM machine fund. I do other types of investments. And then I also do some precious metals. I think that gold and silver are a great way to, they're not necessarily an investment, but they're more a hedge against inflation. And I think, owning physical metals as opposed to an ETF or something like that, I think owning physical metals is a positive. So yeah, so there's a lot of things that I do. I'm interested. I actually did a Bitcoin mining fund recently where, we invest in the technology that supports Bitcoin miners. So it has less downside, but it has some pretty good upside as well. So I'm continually trying new things, learning, and continuing to explore. But primarily, I love the idea that you can use debt, to go buy real estate. So we had this happen. We bought, about a little over a year ago, March of 2021, we bought a $27 million apartment building, so 288 units in Jacksonville, Florida. And this was kind of a working class place. And we planned to hold it for 6 years. The goal was to double the investment, but we were able to sell it 9 or 10 months later, for 37 million. So again, the market just kind of went crazy. So, but if you have leverage on that, we only had maybe 20 or 25% down. So we were able to almost, close to double the equity on that deal, which was amazing, right? So the fact that you can use it's a way you can short the dollar. You know that they're basically printing a lot more money. So if you're getting debt and you can hold assets, you know they're going to appreciate. They only have to appreciate 20 to 25%, and you basically doubled your money. It's kind of magical. So every time it happens, it's like, oh, that actually happened. Wow, it's exciting.
Mm. There is that. I mean, it's sort of, they talk about, well, compound interest is like the eighth wonder of the world or ninth wonder, and then you have, inflation. So if you're on the right side of inflation, it's wonderful. If you're on the wrong side, it's
Mhm.
horrible. That's
Yeah.
right. Choose your
Mhm.
sides if you really should choose your side, ideally.
Yeah.
How much of it is education for you and helping people, and or is it more for you? I mean, where do you normally sit? It's investing for the people in funds and sort of finding the deals that are matching the deal with the investors, or is it helping people to help themselves? Where do you normally sit?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's both. I mean, I think I just love the business. I love investing. I love doing it. You look at great investors like Warren Buffett or other people, and you just think, a lot of it's just longevity. They just invested in good things for a long period of time, and it works out well. So I think that it's been transformational in my life. But the more that I can be involved in helping other people, the more and in many ways, I get a benefit. Financially, I get a benefit just feeling like I'm doing the right thing. There's this quote by Zig Ziglar. He said, "You can have anything you want in life if you just help enough other people get what they want." And so it's kind of that principle of, well, really, where is someone at? And I'll do, these 1,200 calls I've had with investors. I'll start out and say, well, hey, whatever you're doing, a lot of people want to kind of do what we do, or we find deals and we bring them to investors and we syndicate and raise the money. And so I'll be like, hey, if you want to do it, like, I'd love to help you. If you want to be passive, I'll tell you. But so it's just kind of putting myself in the place of, hey, how can I be a helper and a connector, or introduce somebody to a person, an event, an idea, a book, something to kind of help them on their journey. And I think it's like karma. All that stuff comes back, right? So it doesn't matter if they do a deal with me or they do with someone else. I think that everybody that has a certain net worth, maybe of a few 100,000 or more, would be, better off if they were involved in some sort of syndicated multifamily deal. Obviously, I'm not giving any specific financial advice for somebody's situation, but I think it would serve them. It would serve them to look at that.
I mean, like a lot of things, I suppose it is about at least having a plan or a strategy, right? Or looking at it, no different than anyone else's, rather than blindly saying, I don't know, well, I'll just hope that everything's going to be okay. And
Right.
it's getting that sort of happy medium in between the two.
Yeah.
For you, I mean, where, where's this all leading to for you? Do you have a view in terms of, what your purpose is and your goals, etc. here?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's continuing to try to grow the business, which will allow me to kind of hopefully hire more people and continue to do. I love speaking. I love sharing with people. I love having conversations. It's getting to be, at some points, it feels that we're just growing so fast that I am going to need to start hiring more people. But eventually, I mean, I think I was sharing before. My big thing is, I'd love to grow this to a certain size and then just really start ramping up, giving more away to the philanthropy efforts, with human trafficking, and spending more time. I'm actually headed to Guatemala next month to go kind of see some of the boots on the ground operation there and some things that are happening. And I think the story is just like the story I shared earlier about that girl in Greece. There's a lot of transformation in those stories, and so I think, well, I need to hear some more of those stories. I need to really get around that. But yeah, I think it's fun. It's fun to be doing something where you're creating value for people, and as long as I can stay in the space where what I'm doing is really finding a way to help people get where they need to go and doing it in a unique way, I want to hope I can do it as long as I can.
Out of interest, I mean, having spoken to so many investors and, and going through all that, I mean, is there a common message? What are people looking for here? Do you know?
Well, it's interesting. I just did at this conference I was at. It was called the Vertical Street Ventures conference, but I talked about this, what I learned with speaking with 1,200 investors, and just the mind. It was really about the millionaire secrets, right, and things that people had. But I think a few of the things that people are looking for, the average net worth of people that I spoke with was about $2 million, or some people are much higher, 10, 20 million or higher. But a lot of it was really came down to time. People are very, very busy. How do you leverage your time? How do you, instead of doing deals, how do you have other people do deals for you? How do you create more space in your time? And even with time, Another thing that they did was to really invest in themselves. That was really the second thing, is to invest in themselves as far as their own education. Here it's kind of amazing to me that these millionaires would just take 30 minutes out and have a call with me, right, to learn about our investments, because they saw value that, hey, this is something that will actually help me. And something I shared too is that most people think that millionaires are, they're all inherited. They already inherited money, and that's how it works, whatever. Well, the Fidelity Investments did a survey, and they found that 88% of millionaires are self-made, which I thought was just an absolutely shocking statistic, right? That 9 out of 10 millionaires are self-made. They did not inherit it. So to me, when you share that, I realize these are just simply principles that anybody can learn, and they can figure it out. So I learned some of these things, and I was able to 15x my net worth over a 4-year period, right? It's absolutely possible. So I think that was kind of the cool part, is just you can invest in yourself. There's two things to do that. Networking and education are incredibly powerful. The people that you meet, the people in the room, as well as just getting educated through books. My goal this year is to read 60 books. I think I've read 31 so far this year, so I'm on track. So hopefully I'll get there. But reading books, the average CEO reads 60 books a year. The average person reads 12 books a year, and half of Americans read less than 4 books a year. So again, just reading is something incredibly powerful. And the last thing was really paying less in taxes. So there's a lot of ways to reduce your taxes, particularly with real estate, and pay less or no taxes. I paid almost no taxes for several years by using, I don't call them loopholes, I call them incentives that the government gives to really partner with workforce housing. So, those are the things a lot of wealthy people, when it comes to time, investing in themselves, as well as taxes.
That is the thing about wealth, isn't it? It's sometimes not just about making it, sometimes about keeping it or not
That's,
losing
yeah,
it.
that's it. Yeah. Yeah. And that's Warren Buffett. He says, even investing, rule number one of investing is just don't lose money. And then rule number two is don't forget about rule number one. And it's interesting, if you're an investor, there's a great book out there called Cash Flow Quadrant. And he talks about, this is again, Robert Kiyosaki. It was his second book, which I actually enjoyed more than his first one. And he would say, if you're an employee or an employee or self-employed, you're paying very high taxes, typically 40 to 60% in taxes. And he said, this is just about any country of the world. You're paying a lot of money in taxes. If you're a doctor, if you're a CPA, if you're somebody who earns a lot, you're going to pay a lot in taxes. Versus if you own a business, and I go like this because it's on kind of on the left side of this chart. You have, the employee or the self-employed. On the right side, you have the business owner or the investor. Business owners usually pay about 20% in taxes. And then people that are investors are, full-time investors, they typically pay close to 0%. And you say, well, that's not really fair. It's like, well, there's incentives there. And this is just about any country of the world so it's just trying to find ways, how can I invest in such a way where I can grow my wealth on a tax-free basis? It's huge.
That's true. And it is interesting, as you saying, I mean, inflation wouldn't be as strong in Europe as it is in America, but and the tax breaks are not as obvious, but I mean, it is a case of going, listen, there's those that do, and there's those that talk about it, and there's those that don't know anything about it, so
Yeah.
choose your camp, right? It's
Yeah.
whether it is real estate, whether it's whatever. And it's even, I suppose, assets in business as well. It's saying, assets don't have to be, sort of brick and block, it can be, writing a book, it can be a podcast show, it can be anything, right? Because it can be listened to while you sleep, and it's getting people to realize that that can be an asset as well.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be sort of multifamilies or residential buildings or whatever, so it's possible for anyone, right? If you choose, it's down to choice.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
What for you, I mean, where would we find you in your flow state? Where is sort of Bronson at his best, and sort of the creative genius flowing through you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know. I think I'm a big list guy. I like making lists for just kind of getting stuff done. I'm a big, like, hey, get the things off the list, finish them. But I think when I'm in the best place, I really love being at events. I go to about 15 live events per year that are conferences. So I literally travel for conferences, and I just love being around people because you learn a lot. You learn when you're in person. I think COVID has been a little challenging for that, just to be like, okay, we can't get around people for a while. And it's funny, living in California, the restrictions have been so strong that we just started meeting about maybe 6 months ago back in person and taking masks off recently. But It's, in Texas for a year and a half, they've been doing in person 700 people in a room, and so with no masks. So it's felt very different, regardless of people's view on it. It's just, if you're an extrovert, they said when COVID happened, a lot of the introverts were like, yay. And the extroverts were like, oh, they're like crying, So I was one of the extroverts that was crying. So to me, I think getting around other people, I think that probably going back to the networking and education for me at Flow is, being in a room with awesome people and being able to meet them and hear their story. And it's also sitting, in my living room reading a book. So I think those are a couple of things I made with my journal and just kind of taking notes. So I think those are a couple of places that I really feel like I'm in my space.
Mm. What's the nicest thing somebody could say about you?
The nicest thing somebody could say about me. I think, well, hopefully, I think some people would say, that I'm a genuine person, that what you see is what you get, that I'm genuinely trying to help people, that it's not, whether people invest with it. Yeah, I'd love for people to invest with us, but it's more important that they just, if it fits their profile, to invest with someone. And so I think for me, and that's something I've had to, we all have to continue to work at, right? If something benefits, our business or something, I have to say, well, what's really best for this person? And I think, again, it goes back to the Ziglar quote, just helping people get what they want allows you to be somebody that is creating value. And if you create enough value, that's how people really get paid. So I think, hopefully that's what comes across, what people would share is that, hey, this is a genuine person that's just really trying to help people.
Mm. No, it makes a lot of sense. Tell me, what's a bit of a guilty pleasure for you?
I, someone look at it like a pleasure. I love fitness stuff. I love running. I love working out. I do hot yoga. I do Spartan racing, which is a little intense, but it involves different, it involves obstacles and climbing things and burpees and all kinds of stuff. But to me, I really enjoy it. So that's something I enjoy. And then international travel is another one I just love. I'm always planning my next trip. So
Wow, never heard of that Spartan racing.
yeah.
Sounds painful, but sounds really good.
Yeah, it is. And sometimes you're out there, you're like, why am I doing this? But it's like, no, it's again, it's the idea of when you're doing a goal, you're doing something you love, or it's kind of like, I didn't think this was possible. And so I've started doing competitively now. So I finished 10th out of 79 for my age group in a previous race, which I was really proud. I improved my time for a 10K by 16 minutes. And so it's just again about trying to see improvement and grow and stay healthy and all that stuff. So it's a fun way to kind of put a goal to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for you then, I mean, where does, downtime, where does Bronson go to recharge and, just get your energy back up and really sort of.
Yeah, so I read as a downtime thing for me. I'll read and I enjoy that. Some of the fitness stuff is really great, and then I just I don't know when this episode will come out, but the new Top Gun movie just came out recently, and I watched that, and that was really fun. So I'll just try to find things that like one day a week, kind of that idea of Sabbath. Just try to turn everything off and just really sleep in and read a book or hang out with a friend or go to the beach or get on my paddle board. I have an inflatable paddle board, so I'll take that to the beach and just things like that are just when I'm doing our golf things, I just really can't be doing my work stuff, or I've got to put the phone away. I've got to put the stuff away so that I can just be in the moment. And every time I do those, every time I go golfing, every time I go snowboarding, every time I go get on my paddleboard, I always say, man, I got to do this more often, but I don't realize it until I'm out there. So it's just like, and it's hard to like schedule half a day to go do some of these things, but I think it is really important.
Yeah. And of course, then that's also the time you come up with some great stuff too, right? 'Cause
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's huge creativity. I'm sure for you. Do you have some things that you do like that, or what do you do to recharge?
yeah, just even taking time out, and as you say, I mean, I sort of, I wouldn't say it's that relaxing, but even taking the kids to school every day and picking them up, it's little things, and then going for a walk in the forest straight after as well. And it's amazing. It's just taking that time and, sort of had this weird experience not so long ago whereby I was just holding a leaf and I was like
Yeah.
7.2 billion odd people on the planet, and we couldn't actually recreate this leaf. We could recreate it, but we couldn't make it, and
Hmm.
just that aspect of just taking time out and just getting away
Mm-hmm.
from our cycle and our own beliefs and our own patterns and our own habits, right? So important, so important. So So tell me, I mean, if you were to try and describe your fire in your belly in one or two words, Bronson, what would they be?
I would say passion and purpose.
I
Yeah,
love
I
it.
mean, I keep going if you want one or two words, but I think it's what we talked about, right? If you have something that it's what gets you up in the morning, and again, when you discover your purpose, everything else, I mean, to be blunt, is can just be a distraction. And it's not that I don't like. I mentioned some of my hobbies and things I enjoy doing, but I think my life, um, yeah, I think it's about having passion for what you're here to do. And fire in the belly to me is that. It's exactly um, somebody who's focused, who knows why they're here, who's going 110%. And even if they're not like sure of it, they're just at least going for it. At least they're trying, they're taking action. I think the idea of taking massive action is great because you learn as you're moving, you figure out if you're going the right direction. People that sit and wait and they're like, oh, I'll figure it out someday. It's like those people never get moving. But if you just get moving, you'll try, you'll get experience. Oh, they didn't like this. I'll try this, whatever. And just, it's amazing. I always say this, or I don't always, but I say it, that life has an action bias, that if we just take action, we'll figure it out. Like if you just get in motion, and you just keep taking motion, like you almost can't help but figure it out. Like you'll just figure out, you keep beating your head against the wall, oh, let's try something different, whatever. And then you just figure it out because, anyway, so I think it's really, if you have that, you will be taking action.
Mm. No, it's true. Yeah, it's sort of making or getting the action, getting the motivation, getting the momentum. It's so key for people, and well, that's good. I mean, it tallies back into what you're saying. It's like 15x your wealth in 4 years, right? You're saying, well, so it's not really about time or it's too late or it's too early, it's whatever. It's about taking the right bloody action, and anything's
Right.
possible.
Yeah, that's it.
Bronson, tell us, where can people learn more about you? Where can they follow you, hunt you down, track you, any of the above?
Yeah, well, if people listen this long, I feel like we're good friends now. So you learn my most vulnerable stories. But I do have, on the business side, I have a report that I wrote. It's the single best investing strategy during and after pandemic. It's 24 color pages, just talking about multifamily investing. It actually kind of gets into inflation hedging and what do you do in this time, and kind of making sense of that. Or if you want to, that's at my website, bronsonequity.com, or you can just shoot me an email. It's bronson@bronsonequity.com. But yeah, I look forward to connecting with anybody who wants to chat about fire in the belly and personal stuff, or more in purpose, or something about real estate, actively or passively.
Love it. Love it. Is there a final message you'd like to leave with our listeners today?
Yeah, I think, the theme I would like to leave people with is just, realize that every day and every moment, everything you have is a gift, and really try to, as much as you uh, look forward and see where you lack, but be sure you turn around and do look at the progress that you have made, and that will inspire you to take more steps, and just, continue to be in motion, continue to take action, even if it's small action. Just take some action every day, and that can lead to momentum, and get around people that will help you in that. So I think those are all things that will really help you get you where you want to go.
Yeah. Just do something. Get going.
Do something. Just do it.
Bronson, it's been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. I appreciate your, really being here, being present, being vulnerable. I appreciate it, and being open with us. So
It's been one of my favorite interviews I've done. I've done a lot of interviews. It's been great. So we got somewhere that I really have never quite gone before on a podcast. So thank you, the mighty Pete Lawton. Thank you so much.
no, I appreciate you. Thank you. And until the next time, I appreciate you.
Sounds great, Pete. Thanks.